Okay, before we even start the clock on today's deep dive, here's the bottom line. The heart is the only organ that has to work while it's building itself.
Hmm.
It's like a contractor renovating a skyscraper while the tenants are inside and, the water's still running.
That's a perfect analogy.
So today we are going to learn how a simple, straight tube twists itself into a knot, splits into 4 chambers using these sliding doors, and spirals its plumbing 180 degrees.
All without missing a single beat.
We're pulling together the molecular blueprints from Langman, the structural sequencing from Singh, and the clinical reality from Moore. This is the story of the first rhythm.
It's the logic of flow. That's really what we're chasing today.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're tackling the cardiovascular system, specifically the embryology of the heart. And I have to say, looking at the stack of books you brought, we've got Langman, Moore and Persaud, and Singh. This feels different from our other topics.
Oh, so?
Well, usually we talk about organs that develop quietly in the background.
Yeah.
But the heart is, well, it's loud.
Mm. It is. It's the precocious organ. That's the word we use in the field.
Precocious. I like that.
Yeah. Think about the brain or the lungs or the gut in an embryo. They can afford to sort of sit back, differentiate slowly.
They can wait.
They can wait. They can wait for the 3rd trimester to really turn on. They don't have a job yet. But the heart has a deadline that is terrifyingly early.
Day 22. That number just jumped out at me from every single source. Day 22.
It's unbelievably early. The embryo is barely 2 millimeters long. It looks more like a small alien shrimp than a human being at that point.
Right.
But on day 22, the primordial heart starts beating. And by the 4th week, blood is actually flowing.
So why the rush? I mean, why can't it wait until week 8, like, say, the kidneys?
It's the supply chain crisis. Pure and simple, both Singh and Moore make this point right at the start of their cardio chapters. In the first 2 weeks, the embryo is just a flat disc. It's tiny.
Okay.
So it can survive just by soaking up nutrients diffusion from the yolk sac and the uterine lining. It's like a sponge sitting in nutrient-rich water.
So no pump required.
Exactly. But then this rapid growth kicks in. By the middle of the 3rd week, the embryo gets too thick. The cells in the middle are suddenly way too far from the surface.
They're starving.
They are starving,
Right.
and they are suffocating. Diffusion is just too slow to get oxygen to them.
So it's a race against starvation from the inside out.
Singh calls it a nutritional necessity. The embryo must build a transport system to move oxygen from the maternal blood to its own deep tissues. If it misses that day 22 deadline, the core becomes necrotic.
It dies.
It dies. So the heart isn't just an organ. It's the prerequisite for all other growth.
Wow. That really puts the pressure in perspective. Okay, a quick roadmap for you, the listener. We are synthesizing 3 heavy-hitter texts here, and I really like how we've characterized them for this dive.
Right. We have Langman, who we're calling our architect.
The architect.
Yes. Langman focuses so heavily on the molecular blueprints, the genes, the signaling pathways, the why at a cellular level.
Then we have Singh.
He's our structural engineer. He is just fantastic for the clear sequencing. Step A leads to step B, which leads to step C. Very logical.
And finally, Moore.
Moore is our clinician, constantly reminding us, here's why this matters when the baby is born, and here's what it looks like when it all goes wrong.
And a quick disclaimer before we jump in. This is a synthesis. We're interpreting and combining these texts to give you a visualization guide, a kind of ready reckoner.
But we are absolutely not a replacement for the books.
Right. If you are a medical student prepping for exams or a clinician brushing up, please go read the actual chapters on the cardiovascular system. Consider this the color commentary to the main event.
Absolutely. The goal here is to give you that mental framework, those memory anchors, so that when you do read the text, it sticks.
Okay, let's start at the very, very beginning. Section 1, the master plan. I call this the master chef moment in my notes. Because before you have a heart, you just have this bunch of cells in the mesoderm. How do they know they're supposed to become a pump?
It's strictly about location and, like I said, peer pressure. It starts with the germ layers. You've got the endoderm, the bottom layer, and the lateral plate mesoderm. They're talking to each other.
And the language they're using is proteins. Langman describes this traffic light system that I found fascinating.
It is a perfect analogy. The endoderm secretes proteins called BMP2 and BMP4. These are bone morphogenetic proteins.
Okay.
Think of BMPs as the green light. They're telling the mesoderm cells, get ready, you're going to become heart tissue.
But there's a problem, right? There's a red light that's already on.
Right. There are these other things called WNT proteins, pronounced WNT. circulating in that area. WNT normally comes from the neural tube, where the brain and spine will form.
And in this context?
In this context, WNT is a stop sign. It inhibits heart formation, which makes sense. You don't want a heart growing inside your brain.
Right, that would be bad design.
Terrible design. So if you just have the green light from BMP, but the red light from WNT is blaring, the car doesn't move. To make a heart, you don't just hit the gas.
You have to cut the brake line.
You have to cut the brake lines. You need WNT inhibitors.
And the names of these inhibitors are just fantastic. Langman lists them, Crescent and Cerberus.
It sounds like a fantasy novel, doesn't it? Crescent and Cerberus.
Cerberus, the three-headed dog guarding the underworld?
But here, Cerberus is the hero. It blocks the WNT proteins. So the formula for a heart is high BMP plus low WNT. If you get that specific chemical cocktail in that specific place, a master gene turns on.
NKX2.5.
That's the one. It is the master gene for heart development. Once NKX2.5 is expressed, those cells are committed. There's no going back. They are destined to become the cardiovascular system.
Okay, so the master gene is on. We've recruited the workers. Now we need to organize them. And I was surprised to learn from both Langman and Moore that the heart isn't built from just one pile of bricks. It's built in waves.
Yes. This is such a crucial concept, the heart fields. We used to think it was all one mass. Now we know there is a primary heart field and a secondary heart field.
Let's break those down. The primary heart field, or PHF.
This forms a horseshoe shape right around the head of the embryo. These are the first cells to migrate in. They form the main scaffolding, specifically the left ventricle and most of the atria.
So the main pump.
Yeah.
But if you stop there, you would have a problem.
Oh, a massive problem. You'd have a pump, but you'd have no plumbing to get the blood out. That's where the secondary heart field, the SHF, comes in.
And where are they hiding?
They are hanging out in the splanchnic mesoderm, just sitting behind the pharynx. They migrate in a little bit later, and their job is to build the ends of the heart.
The ends.
The right ventricle and the outflow tract, the big pipes leading out like the cumicicortis and truncus arteriosus.
There was a clinical insight here in Langman that I've circled 3 times. It said that the secondary heart field is responsible for lengthening the tube.
This is a huge aha moment for understanding so many congenital defects. Think about a balloon animal. To twist it into a shape, a dog, a giraffe, a heart, you need enough length.
Right.
If the balloon is too short, you can't make the loops.
So if the secondary heart field slacks off, if it doesn't add enough cells,
The heart tube is too short. It physically cannot fold correctly. And if it can't fold, the plumbing doesn't align. This is why we see things like double outlet right ventricle or tetralogy of Fallot.
So it's not that the heart broke, instead it ran out of building materials mid-construction.
Exactly. The geometry fails because the supply chain failed.
That is fascinating. Okay, so we have our materials. We've merged these fields into a single tube. Now we enter section 2, the loop. We have to turn this straight pipe into a heart shape.
Right. Visualizing this is tricky, so let's simplify. For you listening, just imagine a straight vertical tube. Blood comes in at the bottom, goes out at the top.
IB Singh and Moore break this tube down into 5 distinct zones, or dilations. I think we should list these, just to anchor everyone. Let's go from top outflow to bottom inflow.
Okay, at the very top, you have the truncus arteriosus. That's the main exit pipe.
Truncus arteriosus, got it.
Below that is the bulbus cordis.
Which sounds like a spell from Harry Potter.
It does. Then the primitive ventricle, the primitive atrium, and at the very, very bottom where the blood comes in is the sinus venosus.
Truncus, bulbus, ventricle, atrium, sinus.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this tube is stuck inside a space called the pericardial cavity.
And here's the balloon in a box metaphor. The tube is the balloon. It is growing rapidly. It's getting longer and longer thanks to that secondary heart field.
Right.
But the pericardial cavity is rigid. It is not getting bigger.
So something has to give.
The tube has to buckle. It has to bend. But it doesn't just crumple randomly like a soda can. It performs a very specific, very elegant dance move called the D loop.
D for dextral.
Which just means, right. The top part of the tube, the ventricle area, grows downward and swings to the right.
Okay, so it bends forward and to the right.
And at the same time, the bottom part, the atria, swings upward and to the left.
So top goes right and forward, bottom goes left and back. And this motion tucks the atria behind the ventricles.
Which creates the adult shape we all know. Ventricles in the front, atria in the back.
Now I have to ask, how does the embryo know which way is righting? Right. I mean, at this scale, left and right seem completely arbitrary.
This is one of the deepest questions in all of biology. How do we break symmetry? Langman goes into the molecular side things like serotonin, nodal, PITX2C. These are signaling molecules that basically pile up on the left side of the embryo to say, hey, this side is left.
But I.B. Singh mentioned something physical, cilia.
Yes, this is mind-blowing. At a tiny pit on the embryo called the primitive node, there are cells with cilia, little hair-like structures, and these cilia spin.
They spin.
They spin clockwise. And that spinning creates a mechanical current in the fluid around the cells. It literally pushes those signaling molecules over to the left side.
So my heart is on the left side of my chest because tiny hairs spun clockwise when I was 3 weeks old.
That's pretty much it. That little fluid current is what tells your body which way is left.
And if the hairs don't spin, or if they don't work for some reason?
Then the signals don't get pushed. They might stay in the middle or even go to the wrong side.
Yeah.
And that's when you can get cetus inversus.
Where all the organs are a mirror image. Heart on the right, dextrocardia liver on the left.
And here's the really surprising thing. If everything is reversed, a total perfect mirror image, the person is usually completely fine.
Really? No health
Oh,
problems?
not usually, because the connections are still logical, the plumbing still matches up, the heart pumps to the aorta goes to the body. It's just backward. It's like driving in the UK versus the US. As long as everyone agrees on which side of the road to drive on, traffic flows.
But what if you mix the systems?
That is called heterotaxy, and that's where the signals get scrambled. Maybe the heart thinks it's on the right, but the liver thinks it's on the right too. Or you have two left atria. That is chaos. That leads to complex, life-threatening defects because the logic of flow is completely broken.
Speaking of flow, there was a detail in IB saying about something called a transverse sinus. It felt like a very specific surgical note, but he really insists on it.
It is essential. As the heart is doing that loop, the tissue attaching it to the back wall, it's called the dorsal mesocardium, it dissolves. It just vanishes.
So it becomes untethered.
In that spot, yes. And it leaves a tunnel right behind the main artery.
A tunnel right through the heart's attachment.
Yes. If you were a surgeon, you could slide your finger behind the aorta and the pulmonary artery, but in front of the superior vena cava, and you can clamp those vessels off to stop bleeding during open heart surgery.
Wow.
That tunnel, the transverse sinus, is an artifact of this embryonic looping. It's a piece of history that saves lives in the OR today.
I love that. Okay, let's do a quick check-in for everyone. We have turned on the master gene. We have built a tube using 2 different fields of cells. We've looped that tube so the ventricles are in the front and the atria are in the back.
Okay.
But inside, it's still just one big open room.
A single channel.
Yeah,
Oxygenated and deoxygenated blood would just mix all together.
which is not good.
Yeah.
So we need 4 chambers. We need walls. Welcome to section 3, partitioning the heart.
Or septation. This happens roughly between day 27 and day 37.
And the main tool we use to build these walls is the endocardial cushion.
Think of them as marshmallows. They are these swellings of tissue that grow from the walls inward, and they meet in the middle to separate the top floor, the atria, from the bottom floor, the ventricles.
Langman makes a big deal about what these marshmallows are made of. Why does the ingredient list matter so much?
Because it tells us about the risks. The cushions in the middle of the heart dividing the AV canal are made of local cells, but the cushions in the outflow tract,
The ones that will separate the aorta and pulmonary artery.
right, those are different. They are populated by a very special cell type, neural crest cells.
Neural crest cells, I remember this from neuroanatomy. These are cells that come from the neural tube, basically the developing spine and brain area.
Correct. They are migratory cells. They have to travel a long, long distance to get to the heart.
So they're like specialized contractors flown in from out of town for the complex finish work.
That's a great way to put it. And because they travel so far, they are vulnerable. If they get lost, or if something disrupts them, like alcohol or certain drugs like retinoic acid, they just don't arrive.
And then the outflow tract doesn't divide properly.
Exactly. We'll see that when we talk about tetralogy of Fallot.
Okay, let's divide this heart. Let's start with the atria, the top chambers. I call this part the sliding doors.
It's a great visual because, remember, you cannot just seal the wall completely.
Why not?
Because the fetus is underwater, the lungs are filled with amniotic fluid, they are high resistance, basically useless sacs for now.
The oxygen comes from the placenta.
Exactly. So blood comes into the right atrium, but it needs to bypass those useless lungs. It has to get to the left side immediately to go to the brain and the body.
So we need a hole in the wall.
We need a shunt, but we need a smart shunt, one that works now but can close instantly the moment the baby is born.
So nature builds a flutter valve.
Okay.
But walk us through the construction. Step 1.
A curtain drops down from the roof of the atria. This is the septum primum. It grows down towards the cushions, but it leaves a gap at the bottom. That gap is called the ostium primum.
Ostium just means opening, so first opening.
Right. Then, that bottom hole closes up as the septum fuses with the cushions, but before it seals, the upper part of that same curtain starts to dissolve. Little holes appear, that's apoptosis, programmed cell death, and they all merge to form a new window near the roof.
The ostium secundum, the second opening.
Yep. So the bottom door closes, but a window opens at the top.
Okay, that's clever.
But we're not done. Now, step 2. A second curtain drops down just to the right side of the first one. This is the septum secundum. And this one is different. It's thick, muscular, rigid.
Okay.
It grows down and it covers that hole, but not completely. It leaves an oval-shaped opening.
The foramen oval.
So now you can visualize it. You have this rigid wall with an oval hole, the septum secundum. Behind it, you have that first flexible curtain, the septum primum.
So when blood rushes into the right atrium from the placenta,
The pressure is high. It pushes against that flexible curtain, swings it open like a doggy door, and the blood flows right through to the left atrium.
but if blood tries to flow backwards, from left to right,
The pressure from the left side pushes the flexible curtain against the rigid wall. It slams shut.
it's a one-way check valve.
A perfect biological check valve.
That is just ingenious.
Liz, but it's not always 100% perfect. Langman notes that in about 25% of adults, this seal isn't completely fused. It's called probe patency.
And that's okay.
Usually it doesn't matter because the pressure on the left is always higher. But if the holes are too big or if the curtain is too short to begin with, you get an ASD, an atrial septal defect.
Okay, so that's the atria. Sliding doors.
Mhm.
Now, the ventricles, the bottom chambers, this felt less like doors and more like masonry.
It is. It's brute force construction. The muscular septum grows up from the floor of the ventricles. It's a thick, solid wall of muscle.
Like building a brick wall from the ground up.
Exactly.
But,
it stops before it hits the ceiling. It leaves a gap.
Why leave a gap? Why not just finish the job?
Because the plumbing up above isn't finished yet. The outflow tract is still sorting itself out into the aorta and pulmonary artery. If you close the wall too early, you block the exit for one of the ventricles.
Ah, so you have to wait. How do we fill that final gap?
With the membranous septum. It's basically a patch. It forms from the fusion of 3 different tissues coming together, the AV cushions, the conotruncal ridges, and the top of the muscular septum.
And because it's a patch job involving 3 different construction crews.
It is the weakest part of the wall. And this is a key fact from I.B. Singh. Ventricular septal defects, or VSDs, are the single most common congenital heart anomaly. And almost all of them happen right here, in this membranous part. It's a high-stress, complex junction.
It makes perfect sense. Okay, let's move to section 4, the spiral. This, for me, was the most mind-bending part of the reading.
It is absolutely the most complex 3D event in the entire development of the heart.
We have one big pipe leaving the heart, the truncus. We need to split it into 2, the aorta for the body and the pulmonary artery for the lungs.
But here's the trick. You have to remember the layout. The right ventricle is in the front of the chest and it needs to push blood to the lungs. The left ventricle is in the back and it pushes blood to the body.
So the pipe from the back ventricle needs to come forward, and the pipe from the front ventricle needs to go back. They have to cross over.
They have to spiral. If you're listening, imagine holding a towel with both hands and twisting it in opposite directions. That is what the septum inside that main artery does. It spirals 180 degrees as it grows.
And who directs this complicated twist?
It's those neural crest cells again. Those migrant workers we talked about. They provide the intelligence for this spiral.
Let's use a clinical vignette here to make this stick. Imagine a scenario. A baby is born, looks okay for a minute, but then when they cry, they turn blue. Deep blue.
That is the classic presentation of a cyanotic heart defect. And based on probability, I.B. Singh would tell us the most likely cause is tetralogy of Fallot.
Now, tetralogy implies 4 problems. But I.B. Singh has this one error theory. He argues it's really just one single mistake that causes a domino effect.
It is. The mistake is that the spiral wall is built, but it's built in the wrong place. It's displaced anteriorly. It's shifted forward.
So the split isn't 50-50.
Exactly. The aorta gets too much space and the pulmonary path gets squeezed. That is defect number 1, pulmonary stenosis.
And because that path is so narrow, the right ventricle has to pump like crazy to push blood through it.
So the muscle gets huge. That's defect 2, right ventricular hypertrophy.
Okay, and because that spiral wall was shifted forward, it didn't line up with the brick wall coming up from the floor of the ventricles, so there's a hole.
Defect number 3, ventricular septal defect.
And finally,
Because of that VSD, the aorta isn't just connected to the left ventricle anymore. It sits right on top of the hole. It overrides the septum and sucks up blood from both sides. Blue blood from the right, red blood from the left.
defect 4, overriding aorta.
PROV. Prove. Pulmonary stenosis. RV hypertrophy. Overriding aorta, VSD.
All from one single misplaced wall.
That's the beauty of understanding embryology. You don't have to memorize the list. You just have to remember the first mistake. The wall moved forward.
Now, what happens if the neural crest cells just forget to twist? They build a wall, but it's a straight wall.
That leads to transposition of the great arteries, or TGA. The wall goes straight down. So the right ventricle connects directly to the aorta. The left ventricle connects directly to the pulmonary artery.
Wait, let me visualize this. So the right ventricle pumps blue blood into the aorta, which goes to the body and comes back blue.
A closed loop.
And the left ventricle pumps red blood to the lungs, where it picks up oxygen and comes back red.
Another closed loop. You have two servets running in parallel that never mix. The oxygen never gets to the body.
That sounds instantly fatal.
It is incompatible with life. Unless you have those shunts we talked about earlier, a baby with transposition needs a VSD, or an open foramen ovale, or a patent ductus arteriosus, just to mix a little bit of oxygenated blood in to survive.
It is amazing how much of life depends on that 180-degree twist.
It really, really is.
Okay, section 5. The heart is built, the chambers are sealed, the twist is done. Now we need to hook up all the plumbing to the rest of the body.
The pharyngeal arch arteries.
This part felt like a history lesson. Moore points out that we start with a system that looks a lot like fish gills. 6 pairs of arches.
We do. Evolutionarily, we are just repurposing old blueprints. We don't keep all of them. We remodel them extensively.
We need to know the keepers. I used some memory anchors to keep these straight. Listeners, if you're driving, this is a good part to repeat out loud.
Let's hear them.
Okay. The third arch, C, is the third letter of the alphabet. So the third arch gives us the carotids, the common and internal carotid arteries.
Correct. Nice and easy.
The fourth arch, this is the big one. On the left side, it becomes the arch of the aorta, the main highway out of the heart.
And we're on the right.
The right subclavian artery.
Yeah.
Then the sixth arch.
This is the pulmonary arch. It forms the pulmonary arteries. But on the left side, it keeps a vital connection open during fetal life. It forms the ductus arteriosus.
That ductus is so crucial. But before we get to circulation, I want to touch on a nerve quirk. The recurrent laryngeal nerve. This always confused me in anatomy class. Why does the left nerve loop way down in the chest while the right one stays higher up in the neck?
It's entirely because of this remodeling. The nerve hooks around the sixth arch artery on both sides. On the left, the sixth arch stays. It becomes the ductus arteriosus, which is attached to the aorta. So the nerve gets dragged down into the chest as the heart descends.
It gets caught.
It gets caught. And on the right,
What happens on the right?
the bottom part of the sixth arch completely disappears. It degenerates, so the nerve just slides up. It gets caught by the next available hook, which is the fourth arch, the right subclavian. So the right nerve loops much higher up, right under the collarbone.
So it's basically a historical accident of which arteries disappeared and which ones stayed.
Exactly. Anatomy is just the physical record of embryological history. If you want to understand the map, you have to study the terrain of the past.
Incredible. All right, let's bring this baby home. Literally. We have a fetus ready to be born. Let's talk about the transition.
This is the single most dramatic physiological event in human life, the first breath.
Moore describes the setup so well. In the fetus, the lungs are collapsed and filled with fluid. They're a high-resistance circuit. The placenta is the real-life support system, and it's low resistance.
So blood just follows the path of least resistance. It comes from the placenta, bypasses the liver via the ductus venosus, and goes into the right atrium.
Then it shoots through our sliding door, the foramen ovale to the left side, and gets pumped to the head and brain.
And any blood that misses that turn and falls into the right ventricle gets pumped toward the lungs. But it hits that wall of resistance, so it uses the escape hatch,
The ductus arteriosus.
to go straight from the pulmonary artery to the aorta, bypassing the lungs completely.
So you have 3 shunts, ductus venosus, foramen ovale, ductus arteriosus. The whole system works perfectly underwater.
Then, birth. The umbilical cord is cut. The placenta, that low resistance strain, is gone. All of a sudden, systemic resistance in the body spikes.
At the exact same moment, the baby takes its first gasp of air.
The lungs inflate. The blood vessels in the lungs that were squeezed shut pop open. Pulmonary resistance plummets to near zero,
So blood rushes into the lungs for the first time.
which means a massive amount of blood starts returning to left atrium. The pressure in the left atrium skyrockets way higher than the right side.
And what does that do to our sliding doors?
That high pressure in the left atrium pushes the septum primum hard against the septum secundum. Slam. The door closes. The valve of the foramen oval is functionally sealed.
Closed in minutes.
And then it fuses permanently over the next few months.
What about the other escape hatch, the ductus arteriosus?
Two things happen. First, the flow through it stops or even reverses because the pressures in the aorta and pulmonary artery equalize. Second, the chemistry of the blood changes.
It's full of oxygen now.
Right. And the wall of the ductus contains smooth muscle that is extremely sensitive to oxygen and also to a chemical called bradykinin, which is released from the lungs.
So the oxygen itself acts like a drug, a constrictor.
Yes. Makes the muscle clamp down hard. The ductus closes off and over time becomes a fibrous cord, the ligamentum arteriosum.
And just like that, the shunts are gone. You are now a series circuit. Right heart to lungs, left heart to body.
It's a seamless transition from a parallel pump to a series pump, all triggered by a single breath.
It really makes you appreciate the precision of it all. We went from a simple tube on day 22 to this complex, self-modifying life support system.
And remember the most amazing part, it was working the whole time. That's the miracle.
I want to leave our listeners with a thought that really struck me while reading about cetus inversus again. You mentioned that you can build the heart completely backwards, a mirror image. And it still works.
Yes, as long as everything else is mirrored too.
To me, that's profound. It means biology isn't actually obsessed with left or right as absolute, rigid rules. It just cares about the logic of the system. As long as the pattern holds, as long as the flow connects in a logical way, life finds a way to work.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The function dictates the form, but the form itself is adaptable. It's the consistency of the logic that truly matters.
Well, I think my logic circuits are fully saturated for today. We've covered molecular traffic lights, spinning cilia, sliding doors, and twisting towels.
It's quite a journey.
Thank you for guiding us through it. And to everyone listening, I really recommend you check out the diagrams in Langman and more. It helps so much to see the movie frames we've been describing.
It really does.
Until our next deep dive, keep the flow going.